What's going on, everybody? Happy Thursday evening. It's your 49ers prime time update. Thanks to everybody who was waiting before I joined on the live. I've got a little video playing for you. This is from Levi's Stadium yesterday on Wednesday, 49ers local pro day. I'm sure those of you who already subscribed to the channel got to see it, but I edited it together. Why not? Why not put it together as part of this Q&A? I hope you brought some good questions. I have a few things I want to go through as far as updating you on the 49ers. I know that I was off in Europe there for a couple of weeks. I decided to stay in touch with you through some live videos from different locations, but we hadn't gotten a chance to do a lot of this studio setting like stuff. There's Javon Kinlaw. Why don't we make that big? Look at Kinlaw there on the left. He is looking spry. I didn't really see anything that would suggest that Javon Kinlaw won't be back this next year. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch say that his rehab is also going well there, or Shanahan and Lynch. They're there working with some of those local prospects yesterday. But Kinlaw is the guy to be excited about if you're the 49ers. And then also we got video yesterday of Mike McGlinchey looking good at 310 pounds in some of his rehab work. So the 49ers right now, if we're going to go through some of the big talking points, well, I promised we'd talk about the safeties in this video, but we do have to talk about the McGlinchey and Kinlaw rehab. That's looking good. That's big for the 49ers because obviously you want to be strong along the trenches. I think you absolutely need a good right tackle if you're the 49ers. That helps the whole domino effect of the offensive line be at least one piece easier. So the fact that he's up to weight at 310, he'll probably need to be around, 315, 317 to anchor effectively in pass protection come the 2022 season. The fact that though he's working toward that weight, he's not at 295 or 300, and he's looking spry. Torn quad is nothing to scoff at. I think that is good, solid, reassuring news for the 49ers. And of course, with DJ Jones now gone, you want Javon Kinlaw anchoring the middle of that defense. He's going to be so important to have his massive frame in there. And you took a look at that video, Javon Kinlaw walking around with Brandon Ayuk yesterday. That's good news for the 49ers. Second thing, it's time to talk more about Trey Lance. I know that the discussion here over the past week has been dominated by Deebo Samuel. Nothing wrong with that. I guess Deebo Samuel was the centerpiece of that offense last year. And obviously, if you're the 49ers, you would, want to make sure that situation is at least settled down sooner rather than later. But the deadline pressure for that's not here yet. Deebo Samuel may not be happy with the way that potential extension talks are going, but the 49ers have all the leverage in that situation for the time being. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I'm comparing it a lot to the to the George Kittle situation, which wasn't resolved until right before training camp a couple years ago. Well, with everybody talking about Deebo Samuel, it seems that nobody's talking about Trey Lance. And Trey Lance is supposed to be the toast of the town. Trey Lance is the presumptive starter for the 49ers in 2022. I think it's time to talk a little bit more about Trey Lance, trying to bring him more into the fold, because this offseason is going to be about Trey. OTAs, 9 practices followed by the mandatory veteran minicamp. Trey Lance is going to be the centerpiece of this offseason. The 49ers need to make marked progress with Trey Lance. Trey Lance needs to make marked progress with the 49ers. And I guess Deebo ties a little bit into that, because you'd rather have Deebo present working out on the field with Trey Lance rather than not have him there. But this is going to be the time of Trey Lance. If this 49ers team is going to contend, not only in 2022, but beyond, they're going to have to be strong at that quarterback position. And if we're assuming that Trey Lance is grabbing the reins of that position, well, these 9 practices are going to be so important for him. He's going to have the team under his wing, right? I mean, he is the starter right now. I don't care if Jimmy Garoppolo's on the roster. Garoppolo can't throw a football right now, which is probably the main reason why he's still on the roster, right? This is Trey Lance's team in the offseason. And there's a reason why the 49ers can afford to carry Jimmy Garoppolo's salary for right now. None of it's guaranteed for the 2022 season. And they're not worried about taking away Trey Lance's thunder. So while Trey Lance has the thunder for sure here over these OTAs, over this offseason program, it's extremely important that he grabs life by the horns, grabs that field by the horns, and improves. does what he can do over the course of this offseason. So we can talk a little bit more about him if you have any more questions. Deebo Samuel's value and the George Kittle comparison. Before I take any questions, I want to share my article from today on The Athletic. This is the one I just put out. This is not to be confused with the article that I had out a little bit earlier this week. I think that one came out on Monday. This is a deeper dive into Deebo Samuel's value. And I touched a little bit on it in Monday's article, but this one delves further into the issue. And I will go ahead and copy this and put it into the chat section so you can go ahead and check it out. Follow along with me on The Athletic. There you go. There's the link. Here's the piece. And we have, I got to log in now so we can actually get aboard on this piece, scroll down and check some of it out. There we are. Now we're in. All right. So we have a look at yards per route run, drop rate, yak per reception, and then we have a look at Deebo Samuel and his running back skills, and then we have a look at the overall efficiency. 49ers, Deebo Samuel on the field, 49ers with Deebo Samuel off the field. This is courtesy of Ben Baldwin, who does a great job with a lot of the advanced metrics. Final verdict, I'll spoil it right here, but you should go in and read the piece because I think I go into a lot more nuance with it. All plays on the field, the 49ers average 0.09 expected points added per play. All plays with Deebo Samuel off the field. Last year, the offense averaged 0.02 expected points added per play. So 49ers were nearly 4 times more efficient, or they're over 4 times more efficient with Deebo Samuel on the field versus with Deebo Samuel off the field last year, which should give you a good idea of how important he was to this offense. But what I wanted to really talk about is some of the stuff I uncovered when it came to receiving efficiency with Deebo Samuel, because this guy dropped more passes than anybody in the National Football League last year. 12.4% drop rate for Deebo Samuel in 2021 was worse than any other receiver in the league. Yet, somehow, through what seems to be a mathematical impossibility, Deebo Samuel, as you see here, was second in yards per route run, behind only Cooper Kupp. He was better than Devontae Adams. He was better than Justin Jefferson. He was better than Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Mark Andrews, who was actually a very solid performing tight end, Tyreek Hill, Mike Williams. All those guys below Deebo Samuel in the efficiency, even though Deebo Samuel dropped that league-high 12 passes for that 12.1% drop rate. So what made Deebo Samuel so efficient? How was he able to pull it off? Well, because if you look at this rightmost column, Deebo Samuel made history. 10.8 yards after the catch on average per reception for Deebo Samuel. I went back through the numbers. Nobody at the wide receiver position has done that on record, and Pro Football Focus has tracked this stat for over 15 years. The closest was Deshaun Jackson in 2010. He averaged 8 yards after each catch. So 8 yak per reception for Deshaun Jackson. Deebo Samuel was at 10.8 this year. Anquan Boldin led the league in 2008. He was another physical style runner. Anquan Boldin was at 7.1. Again, Deebo Samuel 10.8. Nobody's even come close to the number that Deebo Samuel put in yak per reception in 2021. And what's more, in 2020, I know he only played 7 games, so he didn't qualify, but Deebo Samuel was at 12.2. Number far and away ahead of everybody else's. And in 2019, Deebo Samuel was above 8. He and George Kittle were 1-2 in the league in 2019. So in every single season that Deebo Samuel has played, he's led the league in yak per reception. And that's how he gets away with not having the best hands. Again, big red mark on that chart in front of me. That is Deebo Samuel's drop rate, 12.1%, worst in the league. Yet still somehow, some way, he was number 2 in efficiency. And it's because he's historically good at the yak component of the football game. So that leads the 49ers with a decision to make moving forward, right? And I think they've already made the decision based on everything that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan say. You have to, you realize that Deebo Samuel gets to his efficiency, gets to his top tier wide receiver status. And I'm not even talking about the running back portion of things. And he's obviously very important to the 49ers in that regard. But you realize that he gets to that level of efficiency in a different way, through a different path than your run-of-the-mill wide receiver, your number one wideout, right? Davante Adams gets there by having sticky hands and running great routes, being a great man beater. Justin Jefferson, same thing, although the hands aren't as sticky yet. Typically for a rookie, they aren't. You got to learn how to catch the ball, absorb NFL contact. But Justin Jefferson gets open, right? He puts defenders in a blender, kind of like Brandon Ayuk can put defenders in man coverage in a blender. All the other receivers that are listed up on that screen, Jamar Chase especially, can put guys in a blender. These are man beaters who've got sticky hands generally. Whereas Deebo Samuel, his man-to-man beating skills, I don't think are as prolific as some of these other top wideouts, yet he still achieves the same end goal. He still achieves efficiency as a wide receiver, and that's best measured by yards per route run. So Deebo just gets to the same goal through a different path. And I call him a mouth guard removing pulverizer. I mean, the guy is out with a vengeance. He's out there setting the tone physically. So the 49ers have a question to answer. Are they fully confident that Deebo Samuel's playing style, which involves blasting people's mouth guards out, which involves punishing physical style in open field, which cornerbacks quite honestly aren't used to tackling, is that style conducive to long-term health? Because yes, Deebo Samuel does dish out a lot of contact. Yes, he does absorb a lot more contact than I think a guy like Davante Adams. And the 49ers, if they're going to give big money to Deebo Samuel, have to make sure that he's available on the field. But that leads me to one of the misconceptions regarding Deebo Samuel. And the misconception regarding Deebo Samuel is that he's been hurt the whole time. And it's just not the case. He's been hurt for one season in 2020 when he broke his foot, and that led to conditioning issues. And that led to some hamstring injuries during the season. And he only played 7 of 16 possible games that year. But here's the big stat that I tossed in there at the end of the article. In the 2 seasons that Deebo Samuel wasn't coming off that broken foot, he played in 37 of 39 games. 9 of the 11 total games that Samuel has missed in his NFL career came in one season, coming off that broken foot in 2020. So that's just something to chew on regarding Deebo Samuel, because if he's been healthy in the 2 seasons that he wasn't coming off a broken foot, I don't think there's real evidence to suggest that he's injury prone. But his playing style, especially if he's back there running back more often than not, could be more susceptible to injury moving forward. And this is all stuff the 49ers have to consider as they embark on this path of negotiation with Deebo Samuel. You can watch my other video. I talk way, way more about potential contract offers and all this and all that. Bottom line is that he wants $25 million per year right now. Question is, how do you get to that $25 million per year? Do you get there with funny money, with junk money at the end of the deal? Is the vanity enough for Deebo Samuel? Or this is more likely, his agent, good agent, Tory Dandy, represents A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf. He's probably going to want some guaranteed money in there. And the 49ers then have to find a way to make sure that all sides are happy, find that middle ground, and ultimately, I think you end up where George Kittle was. Because, George Kittle and Deebo Samuel have this in common. They are both not just products of the same system, but they are both perfect fits into a Kyle Shanahan system that really accentuates positionless skill positions. You want your tight end in George Kittle also delivering at all the wide receiver spots, doing the blocking, taking some handoffs, but also being one of your most prolific receivers. And then it just so happens that in this positionless skill position offense that's built to accentuate matchup advantages, it's a system that's given Kyle Juszczyk 2 position record contracts already since 2017, right? Because he lines up all over the formation, even though he's technically a fullback. Well, you want Deebo Samuel also lining up in the backfield. You want him lining up in the slot. You want him lining up outside. It's unparalleled versatility, right, for the receiver position. But it's also a added bonus, I guess, that Deebo Samuel has given the 49ers. And it's become a contractual dance they have to play a lot with Kyle Juszczyk twice. They've made him the highest paid fullback because of his versatility. With Deebo Samuel, with George Kittle once, obviously in 2020, because he can play tight end and because he's also delivering at all those receiver positions and occasionally taking a handoff. And now with Deebo Samuel, you have to be ready to be more fungible, not only on the field, but also in terms of contract negotiations for the guy moving forward. So really interesting. I think George Kittle is a comparison. It's not might be apples and oranges, but it still is a comparison. They're still both fruit. They're still both versatile. And we'll see how the 49ers go through it moving forward. All right, I'm going to answer a few questions. But first, for the title of this video, I promised I'd talk a little bit about the safety position. How much do the 49ers believe in Talanoa Hufanga? Because they signed George Odom. And by the way, I have this ready. George Odom, this guy can tackle. Didn't miss a single tackle in the box last year. He was very proud to point that out at his introductory press conference with the 49ers. So I went back and watched some of the tape, and he's right. I mean, this guy's a missile. He can tackle in the box. Coverage ability, maybe not as good, but he did make some plays downfield, breaking up some passes. I think George Odom is going to have his first shot at some more extended playing time as a safety with the 49ers, because obviously they love the tackling ability. They want it for special teams, but you don't just go and sign a guy just to play special teams. You sign him because you think he could contribute at safety. But my big question is, obviously, it's Jimmy Ward's spot at free safety. That other safety spot's what's up for grabs. Jaquiski Tartt remains unsigned. How much faith do the 49ers have in Talanoa Hufanga? I think they love his ability to be a coverage, be a tackling missile. I think they love his ability to throw his head in there in the box. He can throw his weight around in close quarters. I'm not so sure that they're very bullish on Talanoa Hufanga's speed and his coverage ability. I think that George Odom might actually give you a little bit more in terms of coverage ability. And I do think the 49ers are going to run 3 safety sets next year. They might go out in the draft and they might get either a project or somebody with one of their more valuable picks. But as of right now, if the season started today, you're looking at Tarvarius Moore coming off of a season completely missed due to injury, right? Achilles injury. He's very physically talented, but you don't know where he's going to be. You're looking at George Odom, special teams ace who can tackle. You're looking at Jimmy Ward, obviously, a guy who's going to be a stalwart at the safety position. And you're looking at Talanoa Hufanga, who has questions athletically in coverage, but it did impress the 49ers with some of his rookie instincts last season. So to me, I think you're going to see a rotation at that safety spot. And if you do see a rotation at that safety spot opposite Jimmy Ward, then you're going to see maybe some 3 safety sets as well, as the 49ers try to figure out who's going to replace Jaquiski Tartt as a starter. Jaquiski Tartt. If Jaquiski Tartt is re-signed, well, he will become Jaquiski Tartt, because I think that he's obviously a veteran. He's a player the 49ers would like to put into one of those positions if he were on the roster, but I think they're also trying to turn the page at this point. Obviously, his 49ers career didn't end all too well with that drop of the interception, if that was indeed it for Jaquiski Tartt. But we'll see how this all shakes out moving forward. It just is an interesting position to me, because they have players who have some potential, who have done some good things, but haven't necessarily branded themselves as 100% starting caliber material. All right, so 49ers primetime update. It's time to move on to the questions, because I'm getting hungry and I'm going to want to grab a burrito. Let's go through some of these. Carlos says, Moore's got speed, but bad tackling angles. Yes. And Tarvarius Moore here, to his credit, I thought he did some good stuff in the Super Bowl. I know Travis Kelce caught that touchdown against him, but that was great coverage from Tarvarius Moore. It was just a really good catch and a really good throw from Patrick Mahomes, and obviously really good catch from Travis Kelce. And then I still remember that game against New England without any fans in 2020. I thought Tarvarius Moore was throwing his physicality around in ways that I thought he was making a lot of progress. I think he had a nice tackle or two in Arizona week 16 in that 2020 season. Then unfortunately for him, tore the Achilles. I mean, he's a freak as far as the athleticism goes. Spider chart off spider Spider graph off the charts for Tarvarius Moore. And if he can come back at 90% of the athleticism from the Achilles, you hope, he can do that. He could maybe be one of your starters at the safety position. But yes, you do hope that the angles get better. And maybe with a year of film study, a year away from the game, that's something that improves for a guy like Tarvarius Moore. Luke Luna, Odom will win the job over Hufanga 100%. He's more seasoned, and I bet quicker in coverage beyond the box. Hufanga needs to convert to linebacker and get ready for Greenlaw or Z's departure. Now, God, I know linebackers are downsizing, but I don't know if Talanoa Hufanga will ever have enough size to be a linebacker. I see him as more of a dime back that you bring in a dime situation that could, be a run situation, right? You're 3rd and 2, you're 3rd and 3, where the opposing offense stretches it out with either receivers out on the slot, 5-wide package, or maybe a running back that could go into a pattern, one of those in tweener downs, right? I think and there's a lot of those now in the NFL, and there's a lot of those offensive formations now in the NFL that you have to cover. So I almost look at Talanoa Hufanga as a player where you do want that third safety in a dime situation, right? Where you do want that dime back. I see Talanoa Hufanga as a defensive back. I don't see him as a linebacker. Yeah, he could throw his weight around in the box, but coming from a dime perspective. From a linebacker's perspective, it's tough. From a linebacker perspective, you'd rather have a little bit more size, like Dre Greenlaw, like Aziz Elshire, but that size better be able to run. So it depends which angle you're coming at this from. Linebacker perspective, you still got to have some of that size. 49ers thought they were a little light at linebacker last year, right? So, that's why they went out and they made one of their signings this year, because they wanted to get a little bit heavier at the linebacker position. They've been talking about safety converts for a long time. The 49ers have. And you go through Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles. You go, even Fred Warner was a DB in college. Here, I'm going to pop open the roster just so we can take a look at where the 49ers are from a roster building standpoint at the linebacker position. And this will help illustrate why I think they're not, all too bullish on moving somebody like Talanoa Hufanga to linebacker, because they brought in Oren Burks from the Packers, and Burks, John Lynch has explicitly said, we needed more beef at the linebacker position. We'd gotten a little too crazy with some of the safety conversions with the run fits and all this and all that. So Oren Burks is a guy to bulk up that linebacker position. You go at it from the perspective of bulk that can run instead of a safety that can move in and try to stop the run. And you have to find that perfect balance. And if you find that balance, well, then you have a defense that's adaptable in the way that it can defend. So anyway, I am going to close that comment, put up the depth chart here really quickly. Let's see. There it is. It's a little bit bigger. Look at the linebacker position. Warner, Greenlaw, Elshire, Burks, Flanagan-Fowles, Greenlaw, Warner, all speed guys. Burks is going to bring you speed, obviously, with his special teams background. But hopefully, if you're the 49ers, also the ability to muscle up a little bit against the run. By the way, do I have Trey on here yet? No, I don't. So it's a great time to do just this. Why don't we slot in Kamoko Trey, 49ers edge rusher, signed formerly of the Colts, into the depth chart, the ceremonious depth chart slotting. They got a lot of defensive linemen on this roster right now. I think Trey, man, they really like Jordan Willis. So obviously, he was a special teams hero for them. But as an edge defender, I think you have to slot Trey in ahead of him. So I think that we move Jordan Willis out here. And I think that we put Trey, they picked up from the Colts, right there. And I think that we highlight, right here. We got to highlight everybody the 49ers have signed this offseason in yellow. So there you go. Willis is in there. Now let's count the defensive linemen. That's 4. That's 8. That's 11. That is 13 defensive linemen and 14 defensive linemen under contract. for the 49ers, counting D Ford. And we don't expect D Ford to be under contract for all too much longer, but still 13 under contract. And right now I have 4, 8, 11 projected to make the 53-man roster. Now, somebody might get hurt, somebody might get traded, but that is the position of greatest emphasis for the 49ers. They love stocking up on defensive linemen. And if the season started today, I think 11 would make the 53. Now, the season doesn't start today, so there's a lot more room for permutation there. But slotting one of the newer signings into that, a one-year deal, obviously no real cap downside for the 49ers, just hammers home the point that they really, really emphasize the defensive line. That's like the foundational core of this football team, and at least the defense. So with that being done, let's move back to the questions. Yep, hit that like button. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate you. No, to answer this question from Carlo, this is Trey signing me. They don't sign any defensive end to the late rounds. I don't think it necessarily means that. Especially if you can get somebody in on a veteran salary exception with not a whole lot of guaranteed money. Even Kerry Hyder is not a veteran salary exception, but there's not a lot of guaranteed money with that deal. If you can go with these low downside deals, that means that you could still stock up in the draft, the best player available, which is why you want to stock up. You want to be as prepared roster-wise when you enter the draft so you don't have the draft due to need. So you can go best player available. And if you really love a defensive end, if he's high up on your board and you grab that defensive end in the second or third round, well, he's probably going to displace one of these, lower on the pecking order guys. So I don't think that you can draw any, correlation between these one-year signings and what the 49ers might do in the draft. They just want to insulate this roster. They go best player available to the greatest extent possible as this moves forward. Can we expect the 49ers' usage of Deebo Samuel to be similar to this past season if he gets an expensive extension? Or will the 49ers become more conservative with his usage? Well, they used him in the backfield on 116 snaps this past year. Is that a lot? Yeah, that's a lot, especially considering the fact that he's one of the most used wideouts in the game too. Running backs get hurt more often than other positions. The 49ers know this better than anybody. So I think the 49ers want to insulate running backs so you don't have to play Deebo back there. But I think they're more than fine letting him administer his physicality from a receiver position because, again, at running back, you're dishing out contact and receiving contact from 230 to 240 pounders, or even 220 pounders. You're dealing with linebackers. You're also dealing with defensive linemen if they're getting off their blocks, and those guys can be up to 300, right? At least 270, 280. At receiver, you're having some fun knocking the mouth guards out of 180, 190 pounders, maybe even lighter at defensive back. That's where Deebo Samuel's comparative advantage comes in. He can rip the souls out of guys who aren't ready to tackle him as DBs, maybe even heavier safeties. They're 210? But once you start dealing with the linebackers and the defensive linemen, as you have to do much more often at the running back position, yeah, Deebo can do it. The rushing efficiency was awesome for Deebo Samuel this past year. In fact, I can pop that up on, no, I can't. I don't have it. Oh, here it is. Yeah, we could pop the rushing efficiency up on the screen. Here we go. It was in the article on Deebo Samuel. This is Deebo Samuel as a running back. Elusive rating, topped all running backs. Rushing yards over expectation in the blue as well. It didn't qualify for this one, but 6.1 yards per carry. I mean, the guy's a stud when it comes to the running back position. The guy's able to do it. I mean, Deebo Samuel is an excellent all-around football player. In fact, from a natural football player's standpoint, I almost feel that Deebo, this is going to sound blasphemous, but he's more natural at finding a hole and using his blocker and taking the angles. And then obviously the physicality plays really well into it. He's more natural at that than beating man coverage as a receiver. Now, he's good enough to beat man coverage, and he's so good at the game after the catch at punishing these defensive backs that he absolutely should be a receiver because it's going to make his career longer and it makes him more valuable to the 49ers. And I mean, he's got to get the drop rate down. Don't get me wrong. But the fact that Deebo is such an unconventional number one receiver because of the ability to be efficient even while dropping passes because of the ability to run people over. That gives him the versatility, the positionless skill position ability that Kyle Shanahan really covets in offense. And of course, to Luke, thank you. Got our first tip of the day. I love those tips because, hey, it allows me to go get a beer. It allows me to go get a burrito. I'm going to go eat a burrito right after this. I'm in Redwood City right now. So we're going to go to El Griense right after this, get a good burrito. Then I'm going to go to bed. Then I'm going to go to Nashville tomorrow and eat some hot chicken. No, I'm just kidding. Whenever we're out there for the weekend, we don't go to Broadway. We go to, shall I say, trendier places. As I have learned from Margot, when you are in Nashville, like living there, you treat Broadway as if it's Pier 39 as a San Franciscan or Times Square as a New Yorker. You avoid it. And there's a lot of cool, trendy areas in Nashville. Anyway, I digress. Those of you who are nice enough to give me a couple bucks at a time, like Luke, who's a regular viewer, that's very much appreciated. So thank you. Eric's, I think Elijah Mitchell will be a monster this new season. Elijah Mitchell was really good last year, and here you could see, I mean, his elusive rating and his rushing yards over expectation, at least in one of the measurements. I mean, it's really hard to measure running back efficiency, but Elijah Mitchell had a good year. And remember that Deebo Samuel only moved to the backfield by necessity last year. Kyle Shanahan, the biggest myth out there is that Kyle Shanahan could just plug anybody in the running back and it works fine. That wasn't the case when he had JaMychal Hasty and Austin Walter back there in 2020 against the Packers on Thursday Night Football. He didn't want to repeat that same disaster in 2021. So when the 49ers had injury issues at running back, they popped Deebo Samuel in there. And Deebo Samuel obviously became somebody that the 49ers were reliant on, especially when Elijah Mitchell wasn't healthy. But if you get Elijah Mitchell in there, if he learns how to take care of his body a little bit better this year, he stays healthy, boom. All of a sudden, you've got a nice setup for the 49ers in the backfield. And that means that you don't have to rely on Deebo Samuel. That means you can put Deebo Samuel out at receiver. And that means, assuming that you've invested a lot, a second contract in Deebo Samuel, you've protected your investment a lot better. It's a domino effect. So it's important for the 49ers to have capable bodies in that backfield. And yes, I absolutely agree. Elijah Mitchell has to be one of them. All right. Should the 49ers draft Trey McBride with a 61st pick so we could run more 2 tight end sets? Asks Carlo Garlbrand. I know I've already answered one of Carl's questions. You know, I like McBride. I wonder where the 49ers might be able to get Derek Deese's son, right? Derek Deese Jr. Maybe it's just because I love family connections and 49ers legacy, but he's a tight end at was a tight end at San Jose State. Wasn't at the pro day because he was on a team visit. Can you get Derek Deese Jr. in lower rounds? That's just another tight end name to toss out there. I absolutely think the 49ers want to run more 2 tight end sets. Is Charlie Warner capable of taking that next step as a receiver? He's plenty athletic, so maybe Warner steps up next to George Kittle. Maybe they draft somebody else. I don't know. Deese is an exciting player, though, just because of the family pedigree to me. What are my thoughts on Aaron Banks and Jalen Moore? The 49ers seem confident that at least one of them could start, Aaron Banks. And, you know, at some point, your draft picks need to come through and play. I mean, 49ers picked Aaron Banks knowing very well they may not be able to afford Laken Tomlinson. And they weren't able to afford Laken Tomlinson. He was out of their budget. So you picked Aaron Banks in the second round. At some point, the guy's going to have to step up and start. If your second-round draft picks, if enough of them don't pan out, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to start hurting at some point. And it looks like the 49ers are going to start hurting on the interior line if Aaron Banks can't get it done. Now, Jalen Moore, right guard, we'll see about that. I guess Daniel Brunskill's a backup plan there, but you really, again, I've said this so many times, you want Brunskill to be your swing tackle. The guy's versatile. Maybe even an apprentice for Alex Mack at center. Brunskill could play center too. I actually think his worst position is right guard, but that's the one they've started him at over the past season. So if you're the 49ers, I really think that some of these draft picks have to work out so you can allow Brunskill the flexibility with which he excels the most? I'm going to scroll up, see if there's any questions here. Oh, here's Rohan. What's going on, man? 49ers did let Marcel Harris, their prior safety turn linebacker, walk in free agency. True. So you have a lot of these guys. Like, I mean, it was a theme, right, for the 49ers. You had. So, I mean, here, we can rewind all the way back here. Look, I'm going to rewind back even further to the two guys that changed the game. And that's Navarro Bowman and Patrick Willis. There's a game I remember for the 49ers in 2012. That was at New England. Kaepernick went off in that game. I think Crabtree went off in that game. 49ers went up like 31-0, maybe 28-0, right? I mean, they were just dominating the Patriots. And then Brady brought the Patriots all the way back, and it was 31-31. And then Crabtree caught a touchdown from Kaepernick, and the 49ers won on Sunday Night Football. I mean, awesome game, right? But what I still remember, especially in the first half when the 49ers were shutting Brady and the Pats down, was just a tremendous adaptability that Navarro Bowman and Patrick Willis brought to the table. Those guys were following slot receivers out. When the Patriots try to get, spread it all out, empty the backfield, sent guys out to the outside, the 49ers didn't have to take one of their linebackers off the field. They kept Bowman and Willis on the field, and Bowman and Willis could cover. So you had guys that that was still before linebackers were really downsizing the way that we've seen today. You've got guys at 240, 250 back then. They probably weighed 245 or so that were such physical freaks that they were able to cover. And Brady couldn't score in the first half against the 49ers. I mean, it was remarkable. Anyway, that was like a foreshadowing of where the game would end up going. And with that foreshadowing, we now have the downsized linebacker position that was downsizing to the point where the 49ers were like, whoa. I mean, with all these offenses spreading it out, we need guys who can cover running backs, who can cover tight ends, who might even be able to cover in a pinch a slot receiver. Well, our idea, since the pass is so much ahead of the run right now, and in terms of preference in the NFL, our idea is going to be to go out there and get these safeties, get these hybrid DB types in college that we can convert into linebackers. So the 49ers went crazy with that, right? Fred Warner was this kind of glorified, he had his own position at BYU. It was called like the Flash or something like that. He was a DB. He was playing a lot of DB stuff. Now he's a big DB, of course, which is why Fred Warner is a tremendous prospect and gives you shades of Bowman and Willis in that he's able to stop the run, throw his weight around now at a smaller level, right? He's not as big as those guys because the league has changed, but he comes from coverage DNA. Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles was a safety at Arizona. He comes from coverage DNA. Now, Dre Greenlaw was a linebacker through and through at Arkansas, but did you know that he ran the fastest time or the fastest MPH on the Arkansas GPS trackers they have in the shoulder pads on the entire defense? He's running faster than safeties out there, and I guess faster than some corners. He was just moving. I mean, Dre Greenlaw can move. So the 49ers noticed that, and they drafted him. Marcel Harris, who's on the screen right below me right there, he was another guy, former safety in the league. Called himself the hardest hitting safety in the SEC. The 49ers moved to linebacker. And then they realized, oh boy, maybe we're a little bit too light. Maybe the pendulum overswung and they needed to go in the other direction. Well, with the pendulum swinging in that other direction, 49ers went out and got Oren Burks, who's a little bit bigger this season. Any chance the 49ers sign Julio Jones? Well, there's always a chance because Kyle Shanahan loves himself some Julio Jones. Just depends what kind of price you can get him for. Right? If you get him near league minimum because he's washed, I'm not saying he's washed. I'm just saying he gets hurt a lot. I mean, the Titans got the raw end of that deal. Good thing the 49ers didn't go out and get Julio Jones, didn't try to outbid the Titans because that would have been a massive waste of a lot of capital given how little he played. The problem is, I mean, he's dealing with such injury issues, and the 49ers are a team that obviously has struggled with injuries, and fans always love to get on the 49ers for drafting or picking or signing, injury-prone players. Well, I think they'd be all over them if they got Julio Jones and he wasn't able to play. So there's a difference between signing somebody who has is on the wrong side of 30, has injury issues for a good price, and signing him for something that's going to saddle you and weigh you down when he's not able to play. And a good price that's an injury flyer. 49ers got injured Jason Verrett on an injury flyer in 2020, and it worked out for him. So can you get Julio Jones on an injury flyer? Maybe. Maybe the whole league passes on him, thinks he's washed. Kyle Shanahan swoops in on an injury flyer, and Julio Jones is a renaissance in 2022, and everybody's happy. One can dream if you're the 49ers, but that would be the situation in which I think they would sign somebody like that. Does drafting a wide receiver early mean Deebo will probably get traded? Well, how early are they going to draft a wide receiver? They don't pick till number 61. So, no, I don't think so. Plus, you've already seen, you've seen how hard it is to develop and integrate wide receivers into Kyle Shanahan's scheme. Again, the 49ers were over 4 times as efficient when Deebo Samuel was on the field versus when he was off of it. This guy was the heartbeat of the offense last year. The game that he missed against Seattle, you could tell they really missed him. They didn't have that security blanket. Deebo Samuel is a player. Deebo Samuel sets the tone for the 49ers. I mean, this guy is important to this offense. And just because he might be trying to negotiate in ways that people don't like by being a little bit loud about it through some of his silence and some of his post removals on social media. Yeah, is it a little diva-ish? Is it a little petulant? Sure. But from an X's and O's football perspective, the guy's important to this offense. The guy was vital to this offense this last year. And that's before we even talk about his contributions, absolutely necessary contributions playing running back for the 49ers. Remember, positionless skill positions, positional adaptability. Deebo brings that to the 49ers. George Kittle brings that to the 49ers. Kyle Juszczyk brings that to the 49ers. All three of those guys are very, very important to Kyle Shanahan's offense operating on full cylinders. And hey, at the end of the day, Deebo doesn't have that much leverage. 49ers have him under contract for 2022. He at some point, he's going to have to make some concessions just like George Kittle did. George Kittle wasn't going to go out there and make $19 million a year because the tight end market weighed it down. Well, same thing here with Deebo Samuel. There's going to be a franchise tag amount that's going to weigh down his contractual desires, and he's going to have to find middle ground with the 49ers. Maybe he gets $25 million per year, but it's not with as much guaranteed money. Maybe the 49ers are able to funny money that to satisfy what Deebo Samuel wants from a vanity perspective, but they're also going to have to satisfy what the agent wants. But again, Torrey Dandy, agent for Deebo Samuel, and Deebo, both of these guys are going to have to realize that the 49ers, and I'm sure they do realize this, but they're going to have to realize that the 49ers do have Deebo under contract for another season. So it's a situation where deadline pressure, I think, will bring cooler heads to prevail. Looking at some more questions here. Ramon, I agree that Brunskill would actually fit better at tackle since he handles speed better than power. Brunskill's a former tight end. He played tight end in college at San Diego State, so he's a little bit lighter. So that's why he's better at center and at tackle, because both of those positions, it's a little bit more about movement, and you could get away with not being a mauler. At guard, I think the 49ers want guys to be able to maul. I think that's been their weakness lately. So you go out and you get Aaron Banks, the second-round pick. Banks weighed 338 at the Senior Bowl a season ago. They've got him to trim down. He's reworking his body. But when you go out and get a guard that weighs 330, 340, you're sending a message. You're saying that you want to be able to beat people up at left guard and right guard in the interior of that line, because it makes sense. That's been a weakness for the 49ers. I mean, right guard, it's been, I don't want to say turnstile position, but it's been the weakness as far as pass protection on this offensive line. All right, any more questions? I'm getting hungry, guys. I'm getting really hungry. Afternoon lunch video was from Marin County today. Go ahead and check out Lunch with Lombardi. Obviously, you could go check out all the European food videos, but if you want something more accessible to you in the Bay Area, had this Japanese breaded fried chicken sandwich. It was really good. The translation, I forgot what the word was for it, but the translation was mother's chicken. And yeah, it tasted like mom's chicken. It was good comfort food on a really rainy day. And I ate it by the Yoda and the Indiana Jones statues in San Anselmo, California. So I had those in the Lunch with Lombardi video. San Anselmo, Marin County, suburb of San Francisco. That is where George Lucas came up with the scripts for Star Wars and for Indiana Jones, which is why the statue was there, for those of you wondering a little bit earlier today. So check that one out. I gave my 49ers thought of the day, ate some good food. Obviously, we had a ton of good food in Europe, and we'll have more and more good food here moving forward. That's what happened today. How was the coffee in Italy? Coffee is really good in Italy. One of the videos, I think I just downed a shot of espresso at Cinque Terre. So if you're in Italy, you kind of just go into, if something says bar on it in Italy, it's, they'll give you alcohol if you want it. I mean, it's Italy, so you can drink wine and everywhere. But bar generally means coffee bar. So people on their way to work, because it's a very walking-oriented culture, right? You're not driving the car nearly as much. You'll pop into the bar, you'll get a pastry, you'll say, un espresso per favore, right? You get your espresso, please. And they'll bring you the espresso. You take a shot of it like it's, whatever your favorite liquor is. You could take a shot of it like it's rum, if you like to take shots of rum, if you're a sailor, or vodka if you're a Russian. Polish people like vodka too. Czech people don't like it nearly as much. Czech people like becherovka a lot more. Sorry, if anybody's Czech, they would know that first one. I was speaking in an American accent. But becherovka, which is this like plum brandy, that's what they do a shot of. Well, in Italy, maybe limoncello for dessert, they'll do the shot. But no, they love their coffee shots. And espresso was really good. Now, if you get a latte in Italy, it's almost all milk. So don't do that. If you want your coffee, get it in espresso form or cappuccino. Cappuccino if you want to mix the milk in a more reasonable way with the coffee. So I hope I give you a good coffee review of Italy. Yep, Brent is late. He'll have to watch the video after the live is finished because you have missed 46 minutes and 49 seconds of this video. Does Jimmy Ward get an extension, or do they draft the replacement at 61? Well, Ward is going to be what? He's on the wrong side of 30 now. So you have to keep that in mind. Ward is such a good tackler and just such a fundamentally good football player that as long as he, knock on wood, stays healthy, I'm knocking on a lot of wood because I never wish for anybody to be hurt, but he's been much healthier here recently than obviously the start of his career. You just trust him on the back end of that defense. But I think you're always turning the gears. And if you're the 49ers, you have 9 draft picks, and I think you might put a project safety in at one of those draft picks. Eric Gomes had a burrito today. Where'd you have it from? Because I'm about to go to El Griense here at College of Marin. Brady asked, what do you teach at College of Marin? I teach an on-camera reporting class this semester and a video production class, where they're actually learning how to post YouTubes. I also teach a writing class in the fall semester during the football season. All right, if there are any more videos, I'm happy to answer them. If not, guys, why don't you guys all subscribe to the channel? That would be great. This is video from yesterday. That's John Lynch with Javon Kinlaw, Kyle Shanahan talking to Brandon Ayuk. 49ers local pro day. There's Brian Greasy, 49ers new quarterbacks coach, along with Bobby Slowick on the left. He is the new pass game coordinator. Got Cal, Stanford, and San Jose State quarterbacks. 13 is Nick Starkel, San Jose State. KJ Costello, number 7. He is Stanford's ex-quarterback, and Chase Garbers from Cal. There's Chris Kasarik hunting for talent. Checking out some of the defensive line prospects at the local pro day for the 49ers. Lynch and Shanahan talking to the assembled crowd, told them to never stop pursuing your dreams. And here you get a closer look at Brandon Ayuk and Javon Kinlaw. Kinlaw is a big guy. Kinlaw is rehabbing nicely from that ACL surgery. More Shanahan, more Lynch. That's what we saw yesterday at the 49ers Pro Day. So hope you all have enjoyed the content. Subscribe to the channel now. We got one more important question. I think I'm going to go with carne asada today, but I do love my al pastor, but I'm feeling the carne asada. If I'm going to talk to at Cancun, sometimes I'll go chicken, but for me, it comes down to You know, I think the
in this
delineation
process.
for me
I've been interviewing with
is
teams,
carne
talking,
asada
with teams
burrito,
every now and then.
al pastor
So it's been a very
tacos,
interesting
especially if you
process, and
get
we'll
the
see what happens come end of April.
My
pineapple
freshman year,
on the spit because it's got that all
he was playing
Mediterranean
varsity. I was playing
influence, the Mediterranean
JV,
assimilation
and
of
then
Mexican food.
10th and
Reminds me of
11th, I moved
Istanbul,
down to
one of my
LA, so I
favorite
didn't get a
cities in the
chance to
world.
play with
You
him.
get the
But I did go
pineapple
to
on
high
the
school.
spit, right? Well, you've got the
Yeah,
pineapple
yeah,
rotating with
yeah.
al pastor, and you shave it off like it's a haircut.
Man,
And I
that's
get
the
the
big
little
bro. Shout
pineapple
out
in with the
to
meat. On a
Big
taco,
Banks.
it's perfect. On a burrito, I don't
Yeah,
know. The
I
balance
play
is a
with
little
his
bit
little
off.
brother,
So
so
carne
we
asada
always
burrito,
just
al
keep in
pastor tacos
contact.
with pineapple. That is
And,
chef's kiss.
you know,
That's
he wished
exactly
me
what I
good
want.
luck, you know,
And
through the
yes,
process and stuff
I
like that.
will
So
enjoy
I'm
it.
very
Al
appreciative
pastor
to have,
is
you know,
fire
somebody that,
indeed.
I can
All right,
talk
guys,
to.
thank you. Subscribe to the channel. Everybody take care. We are on for over 50 minutes. Took a lot of time out of this Thursday night. So I appreciate the subscribe button. If you've got it there, and you could go scroll up and subscribe to The Athletic as well. Everybody take care. I am off to eat a very good burrito. Support the channel, support The Athletic, support everybody involved. We'll be back tomorrow morning with some more content for you. All right, good night, everybody. If you're about to eat a burrito, I hope you enjoy it as much as I am about to as well. Take care.